as much as I love seeing the Eagles struggle and seeing just the turbulence that's going on in that organization right now, I do feel for Carson Wentz in a way, just because I see that, like, we saw the talent. Like, at one point in his career, he was a favorite to win the MVP. That was the year they won the Super Bowl, right? 2017, Nick Foles ultimately took him over the top. Like, after his injury, I think it was week 12 against the Rams when he dove for the end zone and hurt his knee. Nick Foles came in, and, the rest is history, whatever. We're not going to talk about that. But I just, ever since that happened, it's been the talking point of, oh, Carson wasn't good enough. And, Chris and I talk about this all the time, Chris Wilson. It's like the psychological effect of constantly hearing that you had nothing to do with that Super Bowl run, coupled with, just getting extended two off seasons ago, being paid like the franchise quarterback, or like the future of the franchise that he was, or that he was supposed to be. And then seeing a team go behind your back, not behind your back, but just the franchise drafting Jalen Hurts in the second round of the 2020 draft. So, like, those two things, I kind of feel like just, ultimately it's not an excuse at all. Like, it is what it is. But psychologically, I can see where that could impact a guy, and just ultimately see him go from potential MVP candidate in 2017 to literally what a lot of people would already go so far to say is like a waste of $30 million of cap and being benched for a rookie second-round pick. Like, that's a pretty steep drop there in a span of less than 3 years. Like, what it would otherwise be like just the term of one rookie contract. Like, I don't know. I hope that there's a way for him to salvage, I guess, his career. I think it's possible. I still think he's a talented quarterback. I still think all the intangibles are there. I just hope that mentally, this doesn't affect him to the points where it's, it's not possible for him to recover from. And I don't necessarily think that's the case, but honestly, I'd like to see a remarriage with him and Frank Reich over in Indianapolis. I have no reason to believe that's going to happen. I think they like what they have, obviously, right now with Phillip Rivers and Jacoby Brissett, if something were to happen to him. But I don't think either of those two guys, they're not long-term answers. So if Carson Wentz needs a revival and a resurgence, I think it would make sense if somehow the Colts had the cap space to make that contract work, and, whatever they would have to give up to trade for him, which I don't know if it would be much. I really don't know how that would play out, but I think that would be something that would be interesting to see and watch out for. Just, the continuity that he has from Frank Reich's time when he was in Philly that helped them go win that Super Bowl. So I think he was the offensive coordinator. Was he the offensive coordinator? Chris will know. Chris, comment when you watch this video. Leave a comment on underneath and tell me if Frank Reich was the OC or the QB coach whenever he was there. I think he was the OC. I'm almost positive. But all right. So if you haven't already heard, I'm sure most of you have, Carson Wentz has officially been traded to the Indianapolis Colts for a 2021 third-round pick and a 2022 conditional second-round pick, meaning that could turn potentially into a first-round pick next year, assuming Carson Wentz plays over 70% of the snaps in Indianapolis. So, the beginning of this video, you'll see a clip from back in, I think, week 10 is when it was, when I predicted that this would be, or, I didn't necessarily predict that this would happen. I just thought that it made too much sense for it not to happen, right? And so I highlighted some of the reasons why I believed that to be true, and why I still think that remains true to this day. For one, most notably, Frank Reich is there, right? He's the obvious missing piece, the guy that was with him as the offensive coordinator in Philadelphia and during Carson Wentz's MVP caliber season, in which, the 13 games that he played, he totaled 33 touchdowns to just 7 interceptions. You span that out to a full 16-game slate, you're looking at 40 touchdowns to 10 interceptions, which is, a fantastic ratio, and one of the many reasons why he was an MVP candidate, an MVP favorite before his knee injury that occurred, I believe, against the Rams. So, the thing that most people may overlook when analyzing and assessing Carson Wentz, and, before they start to kind of, say who won this trade or why it makes sense or doesn't make sense for either party, I love it for all three parties. Carson Wentz in particular, he gets a fresh start, right? And I'll explain why in a second. Number two, obviously the Indianapolis Colts, who were a play, maybe two plays away. I thought they outplayed the Buffalo Bills, who made it to the AFC Championship game. But that roster, not only do they have the cap space to afford to go in and take on a contract like Carson Wentz and take on that risk because of just where he's the level that he's played at recently, but they also had the roster in place with healthy slate of weapons, a fantastic top 5 offensive line, a solid run game behind him. Like, everything there makes so much sense, and that's before you even get to Frank Reich, who kind of masterminded and spearheaded that MVP run that he had in Philadelphia in 2017, right? So, but here's the thing that I think most people overlook. It's that Carson Wentz led that 2017 Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles team to an 11-2 record at the time of his injury. And then what happens, right? We know about the historic level or the historic play that Nick Foles came in and led, kind of as he took over the reins for Carson and that team, and just how well he played and how efficient he was. If you just go back and look at some of those numbers, I'm not going to get too totally crazy deep into all that, but make no mistake about it, it was a fantastic effort and a fantastic performance on behalf of Nick Foles. But we also don't want to make a mistake and forget why Nick Foles was thrust into that position, to have that role and to have that spotlight and, to have the ability to even be in that position to lead them, right? That's all because of Carson Wentz. We can't forget that. Like, Nick Foles isn't Nick Foles without Carson Wentz. And, so think about what that does to you as a player. If you know that you were at the forefront and of the main component to that team's success before your injury, and then all of a sudden, all of that championship spotlight, that pedigree, that Super Bowl, that coveted ring, that championship that everybody plays for, that everybody wants, right? Now Nick Foles, all of a sudden, he gets all that credit and all the spotlight, and you just kind of almost get put on the back burner and overlooked, because nobody really remembers what happened leading up to that season. They just remember the playoff run and the Super Bowl performance in particular. So if you're Carson Wentz and you show up every single day in the years and games, after that 2017 Super Bowl run, well, all of a sudden there's a statue of the guy that replaced you just because you got injured. It's not like he took the job from you. He had to come in and play because you got hurt. You were no longer available. You see this guy, this backup quarterback, now all of a sudden he's got a statue with Doug Peterson right outside of, I think it's Lincoln Financial Field. And, so it's like, that was his team in 2017. That wasn't Nick Foles' team. You see what I'm saying? So, like, now, all of a sudden, that starts to weigh on you. It's like, this team puts a statue of my backup outside of the stadium. And so now every fan that walks by that sees that's the memory that's reinforced and constantly being refreshed in their mind. And I'm not saying that Nick Foles doesn't deserve to have a statue there, but I'm just saying the mental component, the aspect of what that does to Carson's psyche, his mental, just like how do you walk into work every single day and ultimately not let that weigh on you? Like, I get it. He's a professional athlete. He's supposed to carry himself in a professional manner, but there's certain things that it's just easy to see how somebody wouldn't be able to overcome, and I can't fault him for. So, I'm not thrusting any of the blame on Carson's injury and, kind of trying to validate what happened since then, right, in the years past. Obviously, this past year, 16 touchdowns and 15 interceptions. That's like a Jameis Winston-esque season, right? A 1-to-1 touchdown interception ratio, which is never good. You never want to have that. But I'm just trying to highlight, some of the reasons why maybe it just didn't work out and why I think a change of scenery is so good for Carson Wentz. And, I think he's a fantastic football player. I think he's going to be, especially in this situation that he's now going to be given the opportunity to play in front of with the Indianapolis Colts. A fantastic front five offensive line headlined by Quentin Nelson And, fantastic running game last year. A lot of people wrote off Jonathan Taylor so early after, a couple poor performances and fumble issues and stuff like that. And this guy still has a 1,000-yard season. And then, they've got plenty of wide receiver weapons on the outside as well. So it's like, this is a dream scenario for Carson. But, again, it's just getting away from the toxic fan base, I would say, as well as just the toxic environment when every time you walk into work, you see that statue, you've got all these memories of the what ifs, the what could have been, had I not getting hurt. And, he's diving into the end zone, trying to make a play to beat, at the time, another NFC contender in the Rams that season. And, he's diving, basically selling his body out for his teammates, for his team, laying out for the end zone, for the pylon to go and get that touchdown. And that's ultimately what got him injured. And it's just been a pretty much a steady downfall, downward spiral ever since. But, again, it's like this guy, Carson Wentz, the football player, I think is still fantastic, and I think still has a chance to be great. Again, just getting him a fresh start, rekindling the relationship with Frank Reich, who helped get him there, and then just getting him out of Philadelphia, and then so just there's a lot of things that can be said for or against Carson, right? But ultimately, like, I as a Cowboys fan can't really think back to a time before the Carson Wentz and Dak Prescott debate where we're constantly just kind of talking about, who's the king of the NFC East as a quarterback, right? It's like, Chris, who I feel for, like, has spent so much time fighting for this guy and backing him up and, in every chance and every situation possible. And it's like, I can relate to that so deeply because now here I sit kind of in a similar situation with Dak Prescott, right? And just trying to think about how that might feel to watch a guy that you've grown, just essentially you've become so attached to, just to watch him leave and not without even really getting a fair shake at solidifying himself and his legacy as a Philadelphia Eagle. So, all things considered, that, again, as a Cowboys fan, I love it because now I can appreciate Carson as a player more without just kind of having to stack him up against Dak Prescott. As of right now, Dak's the better player. So, I'll sleep at night well knowing that aspect, but that's not to write Carson off at all. I'm excited for him genuinely as a person, more so than what I think of him as a player. I love Carson Wentz, the person, equally as much. The audience of one mantra that he carries with him and tags on every social media post. I just think genuinely he's a good dude, a good person, and I think he's ultimately a great competitor in that his gameplay, his style of play, the relentlessness, the willingness to lay his body out on the line. I think it all reflects that, and so now I don't have to praise or critique Carson with the Cowboys fandom shield, like blanket over me at the same time. So it's like now I can just really appreciate him officially for who he is as a player. And I think ultimately Chris and I will both, be happy with the outcome of this trade in totality, just for him as a person and as a player. The Eagles, of course, again, this another thing that makes me happy because it ultimately, the forefront of this deal hurts them as a franchise because they've got to now all of a sudden eat over $30 million in dead cap. So, but then again, they're forward thinking. They're trying to get rid of this deal early. If they had held on to Carson past, I think March 12th, he had an extra $10 million of a roster bonus that he was owed and allocated to. So they dodged that extra $10 million. And, with the salary cap already decreasing as it is from last year at $198 million now to what they're projecting to be within, the $180 to $185 million range, the Eagles are essentially just biting the bullet and saying, let's get this over with. We'll eat it for 1 year. We'll probably, we're not going to be really competing for a Super Bowl this coming year. But then after that, fresh slate, cap goes back up. We've got Carson's deal off the books, potentially another first-round pick in exchange for it, depending on Carson's health next year if he plays the 70% or more of the snaps. I think it makes so much sense for all three parties, Carson, Indy, and Philadelphia. So, cheers to those three guys. And, I'm excited to see how it plays out. I'm glad it worked out the way that it did. And, Again, ultimately, I have maintained the perspective after seeing the Matthew Stafford, Jared Goff deal, right, that Carson would not garner a first-round pick in return just because of the recency bias, the contract, and just, things of that nature as to why he hasn't proven himself to be worthy of that necessarily. But I think the potential of what he can be, again, as a player is ultimately going to pay off and pay dividends for the Colts. So, as of right now, that first round pick, the reason I'm saying this is because I was on record on Twitter pretty loud about how he would not garner a first round pick in exchange, meaning I didn't think that whichever team was trading for him was going to be giving up a first round pick. That still remains to be seen. The waiting game now begins, and we'll see if that does or does not become true next year. So a lot of exciting things to look for now. I think that now that we've seen that official cap number, that projection of 180 million roughly, now that that's out, teams have a better idea of what they're looking at and can now go about their roster building and their roster cutting and all their preparation for the 2021 season. So we may start to see some more of those dominoes fall within the QB carousel starting, now that the Carson Wentz deal is done and out of the way and in the rear view. So, yeah. That's all I got, guys. Thanks for watching.